This podcast is created for farmers and powered by Pioneer Agronomy to bring you agronomic insights and proven solutions to fuel forward-thinking farming.
Hello and welcome to the January 29th edition of the Indiana Pioneer Agronomy podcast. I'm Carl Joern, field agronomist for Northwest Indiana and Northeast Illinois. Pleased to be joined as always by my colleague and co-host, Ben Jacob of West Central Indiana. Ben Jacob, how are you this morning?
I'm doing well, Carl. How are you?
I'm doing just fine. We are, as we record today, sitting here a little chilly in Lafayette, Indiana. I'd imagine down in your neck of the woods, it's similar sentiments, but we are looking at a potential warm up here towards the end of the week as folks start to catch the other side of this conversation after we publish. Any thoughts in terms of cold temperatures as you try to keep your feet warm in the office this morning, or how it's impacting what we're setting up for 2025 crop?
Yeah, so definitely cold this morning. It looks by the time this is published on Wednesday, I believe we should be north of 50 degrees during the day down here. So quite a significant warm up here, almost a 40-degree swing from where we're at today. And, you know, we're in the middle, I guess you could say, of the first real winter we've had down here since probably the winter of 18-19, I would think, was a pretty severe winter. And I mean, we've had some cold snaps, but this is the first long drawn out hard freeze we've had since that polar vortex winter of that year. And so you know, this is a good time to talk about the potential impact of the cold, since you and I and the rest of our agronomist cohort just wrapped up our annual pilgrimage to Johnston for the agronomy conference. And
that's right.
You know, for anybody that hasn't been to Johnston, Iowa, or Des Moines, Iowa, to be a little bit broader, so you know where we're talking, in the middle of January, it is a treat that everyone should enjoy. If you think you've experienced cold and you live in Indiana, you probably haven't experienced cold unless you've made that trip. So that aside, Carl, I think there is some impact, but maybe not as much impact as everybody thinks there is from this much cold. So, you know, maybe we'll start with the potential greatest impact for folks that are growing wheat, but understand that not everybody is concerned with that, and there's certainly a stratification north to south of where the wheat acres are clustered. So
certainly.
This
is a great topic, Ben, because I just got a call about winter wheat and how it's soldiering through, this snap of cold weather we've been experiencing over the last, couple, 3 weeks here. And so I'm interested to learn your perspective, as you have a few more wheat acres than I do as you get closer to the lake. But notwithstanding, let's dive into that one a little bit. How does wheat like being cold?
Well, it's actually a requirement that wheat gets cold to let it vernalize to help it tiller. So the bottom line, the short version of all this, and we'll dive in a little bit deeper, is that if everything happened according to plan, we have been nowhere near cold enough to have any impact on the wheat whatsoever. A lot of the time that we've been cold, we've had snow cover as well. So that keeps the wheat from getting as cold. Now, there are some caveats to that. We didn't have enough moisture this fall for it to really be a concern, but we have been pushing planting dates on wheat earlier and earlier. You know, if you go back to last fall, I'm sure we had some discussions about how important is the Hessian fly date truly, and can we push wheat planting earlier than that? So there is a potential that if we pushed planting too early, let the wheat get a little bit too big, let the growing point get above the ground, that then this kind of extreme cold can cause a little bit of an issue. But with everything that I've seen and with the snow cover, I really don't think there's any concern to it. I know, if you think how much impact does that snow cover really have? Well, if you think back to the blizzard that wasn't a blizzard, I think we ended up with 8 inches at my house. That I was out the next day plowing the driveway and drove the tractor through the yard, and well, wouldn't you know, there's mud under there, not frozen ground, right? To start with. Yes. So how much impact does that snow cover make? It makes a pretty significant impact to the ground temperature there at the surface. So that in a nutshell, Carl, is my thoughts on wheat. As long as it didn't get too big, we're gonna have a hard time in Indiana getting cold enough for it to have any issues. But
No, I think that's spot on. To your comments about the Hessian fly free date and, how relevant that is to today as you ask wheat growers, have you ever seen a Hessian fly? I think that survey result might surprise some folks. But to your point, if we follow those general guidelines, it seems as though we've gotten along well with raising wheat. And part of that is informed by if you plant wheat too early, just to your, to the point you were making, that's where you can get yourself in trouble, where the wheat gets too big, too rank. Growing point could be in a more vulnerable position. So the phone call that I received that caught the growers' attention was in areas where we lost that snow cover, and so you do start to see some of that browning, necrosis of the wheat leaves itself. As a very rudimentary, wheat agronomist, my impression is that as long as the wheat gets up before it gets cold, it is built to be winter hardy, especially during this time of year. Where you could get into trouble is, let's say that we're having the same discussion in 50 days time, and you're in middle of March, and you've probably gone through a seasonal warm up of some sense, and then you have a snap back to cold. That's where the plant could be confused in a sense. But for our purposes today, like it's been cold, it got colder, but the plant is not confused as opposed to, am I supposed to be growing or hanging tight? So that should breed some confidence for folks. There could be some cosmetic injury. There's been research out of Ohio State University that would support, hey, you can get pretty darn cold on wheat at this time of the year and not see a reduction in stand to be yield limiting. So we'll follow this along as the growing season starts here in the month of March and April. But for the meantime, I think that most folks can rest easy with winter wheat concerns.
Yeah, I would agree, and I might add that if you're sitting there wondering, did my wheat get too big? Am I at risk on that side? I will tell you that there's not a spot in the state that I was in last fall and in October that had enough moisture to push wheat too far. So it really didn't matter in the fall of 24 when you planted your wheat. I don't think anybody had a risk of it moving too quick or growing too fast, and just from a lack of soil moisture, we just didn't have it last year to push anything too far. So I would say that everybody, regardless of planting date, can rest pretty easy on the wheat freeze injury front for now.
Yes. Well, that was something we were talking about before we hit the record button here today. What does that, that dry weather that we went through, that, as early as planting for wheat, we've really been in this abnormally dry or true drought-stricken environment. Curious your thoughts on what that means for the impact of these cold temperatures, freeze thaw cycles, things of that nature.
Yeah, so as I look back, I mentioned since the last polar vortex, we haven't had much of a winter, but we've had some really challenging field conditions to work through. So, everywhere in Indiana except for those northern tier counties is back off of the drought monitor from, I think sometime in August we started showing counties show back up on there. So it had been a while, but we're mostly in the clear. Some folks up your way in North Carl are still a little bit dry, but it does look like we've got more precip in the forecast and on through the spring to get us recovered. Now, as you go west across the country, particularly as you get out into the plains, Nebraska and up through the Dakotas, boy, there's some tough conditions out there. I mean, Iowa's fairly dry still, but to the north and to the west are even in worse shape. So I'm actually pretty excited about the potential of what this winter has done for us compared to the past, because I mentioned those tough field conditions. We have a lot of compaction and a lot of small compacted areas just based off the environmental restraints of getting into the field over the past several years. It was tough. I mean, just go back to last planting season. It was tough to find days where the whole field was truly fit. We had all these 3-day planting windows. We'd have 3 days with no rain and 2 days with rain, and that has the potential to make a mess. So all those tangents aside, what am I excited about for this cold is that we do have that moisture back into the soil, and we are going through these freeze and thaw cycles, multiple freeze and thaw cycles. So we've been quite cold. We've been up above 50. We're going to go back through another one of those here this week, it looks like. So all of that deep freeze and then thawing out has the potential to help break up some of those compaction layers, specifically because we do have moisture back in the soil. If it was completely dry, it'd be less of a benefit, but I think I think this winter has a potential to really help us out with some of the problems that Mother Nature has thrown at us over the past few years. So
no, that sounds just like what the doctor ordered, given the fall conditions we've had in prior seasons. Ben, one thing that we're kind of turning our attention to at this juncture is, we're having winter crop shops, small roundtable visits with customers, and we're kind of wrapping up the 2024 crop and turning our attention to 2025. And as we're in that transition this winter, it appears as though in the Enzo cycle, we'll also be entering into a transition here sometime this spring, supposedly. We've been in a La Nina weather pattern here as of late, and what that typically means for us in the Great Lakes states in the wintertime is oftentimes elevated amounts of precipitation. And just to what we've observed, those drought-like conditions we've been experiencing this fall, we're getting some relief to that, and with a greater likelihood for extra, not excessive, but above normal precipitation for the month of February, for the month of March, and then it looks as though it backs off to the west for the month of April. So just in time for us to get planters pulled out of the shed. Hopefully we've got a full soil profile, but we're not too wet to the point where we can't get in and pick our spots. But that's a lot of hoping in terms of what may come. We'll have to revisit that potential forecast here in the next 90 days or so. Another part of those conversations is pest management. Any thoughts in terms of the impact of winter temperatures that we've experienced this year, as you put it so pointedly, the first real winter that it feels like we've had in a number of years? What do you think that's doing to our insect pests that might have given us some trouble here over the past crops?
Yeah, so I'm not an entomologist, Carl, but if we think back a couple of years, thankfully we had access to an entomologist, and we had Dr. John Obermeyer join us from Purdue, right? And we asked him that very question, and he had what I'm sure is a very eloquent answer that I can't remember, but the short version is that bugs are pretty resilient. And, we have a hard time killing them if we want to. They were designed to exist in Mother Nature, and what Mother Nature's throwing at them right now is not going to impact them in any meaningful way. That's the Cliff Notes version as I had it, Carl. I don't know that I've seen a winter cold enough in my nearly 40 years to really impact insect populations one way or another, but you may have different notes than I do. And you're colder up there. Do you think that you're going to see less insect pressure in any meaningful way going into 25?
I'm going to be conservative here, Ben, and think not. As we look at insects as a population, right? Those that overwinter here, they do it in the ground, and we talked about the freeze thaw cycles. That's the soil moisture that's really breaking things up there. There's a significant resistance to the soil profile itself, doing a significant warming or cooling, deviating from a trend. And so those bugs are snug in a soil rug right now, hanging out at whatever the soil temperatures might be, 35, 40, 45 degrees at any point in time during the winter. It's tough for us to get frosty enough, in a meaningful way to really impact winter survivability. I'm trying to remember the chemical that Obi referred to. Was it ethylene glycol that he said courses through the lack of veins within an insect, and so serving as a true antifreeze agent to help with winter survivability. You and I are definitely more sensitive to the cold, right? We live in wood frame houses. We heat those puppies up to 60, 70 some degrees, and we have to wear puffy jackets when we go outside because we don't have that ethylene glycol coursing through our true veins. And so that's the reason why they're better built to hang out all winter long than what we are. And that's definitely why we're looking forward to warmer climes to return here in the coming months ahead.
Yeah. The last thing, Carl, that I might throw out, unless you have anything else, is that the questions come up quite a bit across the area that I cover, given the tar spot pressure that we had in 24. For the first time, we've had real severe and impactful tar spot pressure. What impact does the cold have on that? Now, I spoiler alert for everybody, none. It's still going to be there, but the question has come out, that you said overwinters, and we do have a scale. We deal with southern rust, which doesn't overwinter in the U.S., right? So it does have to move in. So presumably there is a threshold somewhere in there where tar spot couldn't overwinter. I'm not well enough read to know if that exists or if that's found, but it would suffice to say that if you look at the spread of tar spot across North America, it exists in overwinters in counties where it gets much, much colder than it does here in Sullivan County, Indiana, where I'm sitting. So, Carl, do you have any thoughts on how resilient tar spot is for overwintering and being around next year?
Yes. If we were having this conversation 10 years ago, Ben, after we found tar spot for the first time in central Indiana, that would have been a speculative question that we would have been trying to answer, and really curious, wondering what kind of impact the winter temperatures have on the spores. Our impression is that, to your point, no impact here 10 years later after dealing with this disease, especially in some consequence for 7 or so growing seasons in the central and northern Corn Belt. So no, I'd love to say that there is some semblance of impact based on the temperatures, but similar concept, right? Tar spot is as a fungus, it has overwintering, fungal structures that are built to survive the conditions in which it will, be exposed to. So I am not under the impression of any published research that would say, at what point in terms of temperature exposure where you could reduce some of that, virulent load of pathogenic spores. Haven't seen anything of that nature, but I'm assuming that's because, one, it's either too hard to measure, or two, it seems as though that measurement is not giving us any true value in that sense. So long way of saying what you already said. Nope, not under the impression that cold temperatures have any impact. One thing that got me thinking, though, in our conversation about bugs, I thought I'd raise this up for the folks that are a little bit more entomologically inclined. There's this concept of freeze avoidance and freeze tolerance, right? And so with these bugs, with these insects, you either take like black cutworm, right? You don't want to be in the cold, and so you live in a place where it isn't cold, and then you fly back up to where you ought to be. So for those insects that may hang around for some reason or another that aren't really built for the cold, you do still have to reach somewhere between -20 degrees and -40 degrees Celsius. I'd have to pull out the Fahrenheit calculator on that one, but that's getting awfully cold. And then for those bugs that are meant to overwinter here in the high states, you're looking at temperatures below -40 degrees Celsius. And so, as one can assume, it is really hard for us to reach temperatures anywhere near that cold. And as I talk and calculate at the same time, believe it or not, those are the same numbers. -40 degrees Celsius is -40 degrees Fahrenheit, according to thegoogle.com.
Yeah, I knew they came back together somewhere down there, but the bottom line is it's pretty cold, and maybe with the wind chill we've seen that. Now I really enjoy having a winter, Carl, especially with the age my kids are. It was great to be able to get out and sled with them. I don't need -40. I'm just fine if we can stay, in the teens. That's good enough for me.
That's right. Well, hopefully we can continue to put some warmer weather back in the forecast for us to enjoy spending time in the great outdoors, as folks with livestock have certainly been earning their keep here over the last couple of weeks, and know that we're looking to a return of some warmer temperatures for a shorter duration. We'll see what the rest of the season brings us.
Yep, absolutely. I wouldn't mind if it can warm up. I would like it to stay around freezing as somebody with livestock, because I know as soon as it thaws, my entire world's going to turn into a muddy slop hole. And sometimes I'll take the cold just a little bit until we get into the spring where things are going to green back up. If it's ready to green up, yeah, bring on the heat. But if it's not ready to do that, I'd rather it stay frozen for a while.
Perfect. We'll aim for that seasonal average. Well, Ben, this was an enjoyable conversation as we try to identify things that are relevant to those of you in the great state of Indiana as you listen to an agronomy podcast here in late January. Should there be something in particular you'd like to learn about as we enter our crop shop winter meeting type of series out there and in person in warehouses and sheds and barns and wherever you may find us, please let us know, if you're listening, what you like and what you could use more of, and that'll help direct the content that we provide you in future episodes. So with that, please drop us a like, a subscription, a 5-star rating, or a review. That really does a great job for all podcasts. If you like us, helps others find us, and we can keep doing the work that we do day in and day out as field agronomists for the great state of Indiana. So Ben, if people would like to get in touch with you and follow along for more content of this flavor, where may they do so?
Yep, you can find me occasionally on the app formerly known as Twitter at the Ben Jacob, and a little bit more often on Facebook at Ben Jacob Agronomy. How about you, Carl?
Same places on Facebook at Joern Agronomy and on X at Joern. And with that, we'll wrap up the January 29th edition of the Indiana Pioneer Agronomy Podcast. Thanks for listening. Stay safe, be warm, and we will talk to you soon.
Thank you for listening to this episode from the Pioneer Agronomy team. Be sure to visit pioneer.com/podcasts to access additional episodes and learn more about our extensive on-farm data and innovative digital tools that are fueling forward-thinking farming.